Did you know that behind Hogwarts' most hated professor lurked one of the most tragic and complex love stories in the entire Harry Potter saga? Today we'll delve into the life of Severus Snape, a man whose existence was shaped by difficult choices, deep regrets, and an impossible love that defined every moment of his life. Prepare to discover the true face of the half-blood prince, a narrative that goes far beyond what you imagine. Before we begin this journey through Snape's life, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe now and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Also, let us know in the comments which city you're watching this video from. The story of Severus Snape begins long before the dark corridors of Hogwarts in a small industrial town called Spinner's End, where factory chimneys dominated the skyline and soot covered everything with a perpetual layer of sadness. It was there, on a narrow, unkempt street, that lived young Severus, son of Eileen Prince, a witch who had abandoned her magical world, and Tobias Snape, a muggle embittered by life. Severus's childhood was marked by poverty and domestic violence. Tobias Snape was a cruel man who took out his frustrations on his wife and son. Arguments were constant in the Snape household, and young Severus grew up watching his father systematically humiliate his mother, a woman who had lost all the magic she once possessed, both literally and figuratively. Eileen, who came from a respectable wizarding family, the Princes, had become a shadow of her former self, submissive and subdued. This toxic atmosphere profoundly shaped Severus's personality. He learned early on that the world was a hostile place, where the weak were crushed by the strong. Anger and resentment became his constant companions, and he developed an emotional armor that would protect him for the rest of his life, but which also isolated him from any real possibility of happiness. It was at the age of 9 that Severus's life took on new meaning. In a park near his home, he met Lily Evans, a girl with flaming red hair and bright green eyes like emeralds. Lily was unlike any other child Severus had ever met. She was kind, curious, and possessed something special that he recognized immediately: magic. The encounter between Severus and Lily was magical in the most literal sense of the word. Severus saw Lily bring a wilted flower back to life with just a touch, and he knew he had found someone like him. For the first time in his young life, Severus didn't feel alone in the world. He approached Lily with a mixture of nervousness and excitement and began to tell her about the magical world she had never known. Severus became Lily's guide to the world of magic, explaining Hogwarts, the different types of spells, and the school's houses. He spoke passionately about Slytherin House, describing it as home to the smartest and most ambitious wizards. Lily listened with fascination, but also with a certain concern when Severus spoke admiringly about dark magic and wizards who considered muggles inferior. During the years leading up to Hogwarts, Severus and Lily developed a deep and meaningful friendship. To Severus, Lily represented all that was good in the world. She was the light amidst the darkness of his home life. He lived for the moments he spent with her, exploring her magical abilities, discussing their future at Hogwarts, dreaming of the possibilities that lay before them. Lily, for her part, saw Severus as a loyal and intelligent friend, though she sometimes worried about his fascination with dark magic and some prejudiced comments he made about muggles. She tried to influence him positively, showing him that magic should be used to help and protect, not to dominate or harm. The dynamic between them was complex from the start. Severus was madly in love with Lily, though at the time he couldn't quite name it. To him, she was perfect, intelligent, beautiful, powerful, and most importantly, the only person who truly understood him. Lily genuinely liked Severus, but she saw him as a close friend, oblivious to the depth of his feelings for her. When the day finally arrived to leave for Hogwarts, Severus was eager and hopeful. He and Lily would be at school together, away from the negative influences of their respective houses. Severus was certain they would both be sorted into Slytherin and could continue to grow together in the magical world. The trip on the Hogwarts Express was a pivotal moment in Severus's life. It was there that he had his first real encounter with James Potter and his future Marauder friends. James, a confident and popular boy, immediately became antagonistic towards Severus. The antipathy was mutual and instantaneous. James viewed Severus as strange and suspicious, while Severus despised James's arrogance and natural popularity. What made this first meeting even more painful for Severus was Lily's reaction. She was clearly impressed by James and his friends, laughing at their jokes and joining in their conversations. Severus watched with a heavy heart as the girl he loved interacted naturally with his future enemies. The sorting ceremony was another devastating moment for Severus. As he had predicted, he was sorted into Slytherin. But to his horror, Lily was sorted into Gryffindor. In that moment, sitting at the Slytherin table and watching Lily being warmly welcomed by the Gryffindors, Severus felt his world had crumbled. The school that was supposed to unite them had separated them in the most fundamental way possible. In Slytherin, Severus found a kind of acceptance he had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he was surrounded by people who shared his views on magical superiority and who respected his intelligence and abilities. Classmates like Lucius Malfoy, Avery, and Mulciber welcomed him into their circle, impressed by his knowledge of dark magic and his creativity in creating spells. However, this acceptance came at a price. The values of his new Slytherin friends were diametrically opposed to Lily's. They despised Muggleborns, considering them inferior and unworthy of practicing magic. They spoke openly about blood purity and the need to keep Muggles in their place. Severus found himself torn between his loyalty to Lily and his need to belong in Slytherin. During his first years at Hogwarts, Severus desperately tried to maintain his friendship with Lily while simultaneously integrating into his house. He still spent time with her whenever possible, helping her with potions and sharing his magical knowledge. But tension was ever present, especially when Lily questioned his new friendships and the ideas he was absorbing in Slytherin. Meanwhile, the rivalry between Severus and James Potter grew steadily. James, who had developed an unrequited crush on Lily, saw Severus as an obstacle in his path. He and his friends, particularly Sirius Black, began systematically tormenting Severus, creating a cycle of humiliation and revenge that would define all of their school years. James had everything Severus craved: popularity, athletic ability, natural confidence, and most importantly, Lily's attention. But Severus had something James secretly envied: Lily's genuine friendship and a deep understanding of magic that impressed even the teachers. This dynamic created a toxic competition between them, with each trying to prove their superiority over the other. The Hogwarts years were simultaneously the best and worst of Severus's life to date. On the one hand, he was finally in an environment where his intelligence was recognized and valued. He excelled in almost every subject, especially potions and defense against the dark arts. His teachers respected him, and he developed impressive magical abilities for his age. Severus also demonstrated exceptional creativity in spellcraft. He devised numerous incantations, some useful in everyday life, others clearly intended to cause pain and humiliation. Spells like the Langlock, which glued the victim's tongue to the roof of their mouth, and the Levicorpus, which suspended the victim upside down, demonstrated both his genius and his vengeful nature. On the other hand, Severus faced constant bullying from James and his friends. They teased him about his appearance, his humble origins, and his home. James, in particular, seemed to take pleasure in publicly humiliating Severus, especially when Lily was around. Severus retaliated when he could, but he was always outnumbered. The incident that would forever change Severus and Lily's relationship occurred during their 5th year. James, flush with his exam success, decided to humiliate Severus in front of a crowd of students in the schoolyard. Using Severus's own spell, Levicorpus, James suspended Severus upside down, exposing his underwear for all to see. Lily, seeing her friend's humiliation, intervened and demanded that James release him. James agreed, but only on the condition that Lily leave with him. When she scornfully refused, James released Severus, but continued to taunt him. It was in this moment of maximum humiliation and rage that Severus made the mistake that would define the rest of his life. Consumed by shame and fury, Severus called Lily a mudblood, the most offensive word a wizard could use on a muggle-born. The silence that followed was deafening. Lily stared at Severus with a mixture of shock, pain, and disgust. In that moment, years of friendship were destroyed by a single word spoken in a moment of anger. Severus immediately realized the magnitude of his mistake. He tried to apologize, followed Lily to the Gryffindor dormitory, and begged for forgiveness outside the common room. But the damage was done. Lily had seen Severus's true colors, or at least what she believed to be his true colors. She rejected his apology and declared their friendship over. The loss of Lily devastated Severus in a way he had never experienced before. He had lost not only his best friend, but also his first and only true love. The pain of rejection and loss mixed with shame at his own actions and anger at James Potter, whom he blamed for everything that had happened. Over the next few years at Hogwarts, Severus became increasingly immersed in the ideals of his Slytherin friends. Without Lily as a moderating influence, he fully embraced the prejudices of blood purity and became increasingly involved in the dark arts. He and his friends began to openly flirt with the ideals of a dark wizard gaining power in the wizarding world, Lord Voldemort. Voldemort represented everything Severus desired at that moment: power, revenge against those who had humiliated him, and a world order where he would be respected and feared. Voldemort's philosophy of blood purity offered an intellectual justification for Severus's hatred, and the promise of unlimited magical power appealed to his natural ambition. Meanwhile, James Potter had matured significantly during his final years at Hogwarts. He stopped tormenting other students, abandoned his youthful arrogance, and became a respected leader. To Severus's horror, these changes finally won Lily's heart. During their 7th year, she began dating James, and they became one of the most admired couples in the school. Seeing Lily in James's arms was constant torture for Severus. Every smile she gave James, every moment of happiness they shared, was like a stab in Severus's heart. He convinced himself that James had deceived Lily, that she couldn't truly love him, that one day she would realize her mistake and return to him. Upon graduating from Hogwarts, Severus and several of his Slytherin friends immediately joined the ranks of the Death Eaters. For Severus, this decision was simultaneously a quest for power and a desperate attempt to find purpose in his life without Lily. He believed that by serving Voldemort, he could finally prove his worth and perhaps even earn the respect he had always craved. As a Death Eater, Severus quickly distinguished himself. His exceptional intelligence, knowledge of potions, and skill in occlumency made him valuable to Voldemort. He participated in important missions and earned the Dark Lord's trust. For the first time in his life, Severus felt like he truly belonged, that he was valued and respected, yet there was a part of Severus that never stopped loving Lily. Even while serving a regime that considered her inferior, he harbored the secret hope that one day he might win her back. This internal contradiction, faithfully serving someone who despised everything Lily represented, shows the tragic complexity of his character. Severus's life changed dramatically when he heard a prophecy being made. During a secret meeting in a tavern, Severus heard Sybil Trelawney prophesy about the birth of a child who would have the power to defeat Lord Voldemort. He only heard part of the prophecy before being discovered and expelled from the premises, but enough to understand that a child would be born with the power to destroy his master. Believing he was providing a crucial service to Voldemort, Severus rushed to report the prophecy. Voldemort was fascinated by the prophecy and immediately began investigating which children might be the subject of the prediction. Two families fit the description, the Longbottoms and the Potters. When Severus realized that Lily and James Potter were on Voldemort's list, the horror of his actions hit him like a lightning bolt. He had inadvertently put the life of the woman he loved in mortal danger. Desperate, he did something he never imagined possible. He sought out Albus Dumbledore and asked for his help. The meeting between Severus and Dumbledore was one of the most crucial moments in the history of the war against Voldemort. Severus, consumed by guilt and fear, begged Dumbledore to protect Lily. When Dumbledore questioned him about James and Harry, Severus initially showed indifference to their fate, concerned only with Lily. This reaction revealed both the depth of his obsession and the limits of his capacity for selfless love. Dumbledore, who had observed Severus during his years at Hogwarts and recognized both his potential for good and his problematic nature, made a deal with him. He promised to do everything in his power to protect the Potters, but in exchange, Severus would double as a spy, infiltrating the Death Eaters. Accepting this proposal was incredibly dangerous for Severus. If discovered, he would be tortured and killed by Voldemort. But his guilt and love for Lily was so intense that he was willing to risk everything. He agreed to Dumbledore's terms and became one of the Order of the Phoenix's most important spies. As a double spy, Severus lived a life of constant danger and tension. He had to maintain his loyal Death Eater facade while secretly sabotaging Voldemort's operations and providing crucial information to Dumbledore. This situation required not only extraordinary courage, but also exceptional skills to shield his mind from Voldemort's attacks. Despite Dumbledore and Severus's best efforts, the Potters' protection failed. Betrayed by Peter Pettigrew, James and Lily were found by Voldemort in Godric's Hollow on the night of October 31st, 1981. James was killed first, trying to buy Lily and Harry time to escape. Lily died protecting her son, inadvertently creating the most powerful protective magic in existence, a mother's sacrificial love. When Severus learned of Lily's death, his world fell apart. His entire life had revolved around her, first as a friend, then as an unrequited love, and finally as the person he was trying to protect, to atone for his past actions. With her death, Severus lost not only the woman he loved, but also any hope of personal redemption. What made the tragedy even more bitter for Severus was that Harry Potter had survived. The boy he saw as the symbol of James's victory over him was alive, while Lily was dead. Harry became famous throughout the wizarding world as the boy who lived, reminding Severus daily of his failure to protect Lily. In his despair and guilt, Severus sought out Dumbledore again. He was ready to die, feeling there was nothing left to live for. It was then that Dumbledore offered him a new purpose, to protect Harry Potter, Lily's son, who carried a part of her within him. Dumbledore knew Harry would need protection, especially if Voldemort returned, and that Severus was one of the few people with the necessary skills for that task. Severus agreed to protect Harry, but not out of love for the boy. He did so in memory of Lily, as a way to honor her sacrifice, and perhaps find some redemption for his past actions. This commitment would become the driving force of his life for the next 17 years. When Dumbledore offered Severus the position of potions professor at Hogwarts, he accepted immediately. The school offered not only the opportunity to be close to Harry upon his arrival, but also a refuge from the outside world where he could rebuild his life. Severus settled in the Hogwarts dungeons, creating an environment that reflected his dark and complex nature. As a teacher, Severus developed a reputation for being harsh, unfair, and frightening. He blatantly favored Slytherin students while terrorizing those from other houses, especially Gryffindors. His teaching methods were harsh and his criticisms were cruel. Many students left his classes traumatized, especially those who showed little talent for potions. This cruelty wasn't purely sadistic, though it certainly had sadistic elements. Severus genuinely believed that only through strict discipline and constant pressure could students achieve excellence in potions, an art that required absolute precision. A small mistake could result in serious injury or death, so he argued that it was better to be cruel during classes than to allow students to die from incompetence. Yet, there was also a personal bitterness in his methods. Seeing happy, carefree young people at Hogwarts constantly reminded Severus of his own lost youth and the terrible choices he had made. Part of his cruelty was a projection of his own pain and regret onto the students who could not understand or appreciate the lessons life had taught him. During the years leading up to Harry Potter's return to Hogwarts, Severus settled into a routine of teaching, research, and silent surveillance. He maintained regular contact with Dumbledore, reporting any suspicious activity among former Death Eaters and preparing for the possibility of Voldemort's return. At the same time, he honed his potion skills and continued to create new spells and remedies. Severus also developed a complex relationship with his fellow professors. Most respected him professionally, but found him difficult personally. He was particularly close to Minerva McGonagall, though their personalities were very different. McGonagall appreciated his competence and dedication, even if she disapproved of his sometimes cruel methods. When Harry Potter finally arrived at Hogwarts in 1991, Severus was prepared to meet a miniature version of James Potter. And indeed, the physical resemblance between Harry and James was striking. The same messy hair, the same body structure, the same carefree way of moving. For Severus, seeing Harry was like being constantly reminded of all the humiliations he had suffered at the hands of James. But when Harry first looked at him during the welcoming ceremony, Severus saw something that shook him deeply. Lily's eyes. Harry had inherited the exact same brilliant green eyes from his mother, and through them, Severus could see a glimpse of the woman he had loved and lost. This combination, James's face and Lily's eyes, made Harry a constant source of emotional pain for Severus. From the first day of class, Severus treated Harry with a particular hostility. He asked impossible questions, criticized his abilities, ignored his achievements, and punished him for minor infractions. To other teachers and students, it seemed like pure sadism directed at the famous Harry Potter. But the reality was much more complex. Severus was simultaneously protecting Harry and punishing him. He protected Harry from real threats, like when he stopped Quirrell from killing him during the Quidditch match, or when he indirectly helped solve the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets. But he also punished Harry for being James Potter's son and for representing everything Severus had lost. This duality manifested itself repeatedly throughout Harry's school years. Severus consistently saved Harry's life while simultaneously treating him with unnecessary cruelty. He prepared antidotes when Harry was poisoned, provided crucial information for his survival, and even offered private occlumency lessons, all while maintaining a facade of contempt and hostility. During Harry's second year, when the Chamber of Secrets was opened, Severus worked discreetly to protect the students and solve the mystery. While he couldn't act openly without compromising his position, he provided subtle clues and ensured Harry had the necessary tools to face the basilisk. His concern was genuine, not just for Harry, but for all the students in danger. Third year brought new challenges when Sirius Black escaped from Azkaban. To Severus, Sirius represented everything he had hated about the Marauders: arrogance, casual cruelty, and the ability to escape the consequences of their actions. The possibility that Sirius might be trying to kill Harry awakened fierce protective instincts in Severus, but it also brought up old wounds and resentments. When Severus finally confronted Sirius and Remus Lupin in the Shrieking Shack, all his pent-up rage exploded. He had waited years for the opportunity to see Sirius pay for his past actions, and the situation seemed perfect. He could hand Sirius over to the Dementors and be hailed as a hero for protecting Harry Potter. The revelation that Sirius was innocent and that Peter Pettigrew was the true traitor came as a devastating shock to Severus. Harry's 4th year marked the official return of Lord Voldemort, a moment Severus had feared and prepared for over a decade. When Harry returned from the graveyard with the news that Voldemort had reclaimed his body, Severus knew his life was about to become infinitely more dangerous and complicated. Dumbledore immediately reactivated the Order of the Phoenix and asked Severus to resume his role as a double spy. This meant Severus would have to convince Voldemort that he had remained loyal throughout his years of absence, an incredibly risky task that required not only extraordinary courage, but also exceptional acting and manipulative skills. Severus managed to return to Voldemort's good graces by arguing that he had remained at Hogwarts under orders from the Dark Lord himself, spying on Dumbledore and waiting for the right moment to act. Voldemort, ever arrogant and confident in his ability to detect treachery, accepted this explanation and restored Severus to a position of trust among his Death Eaters. During Harry's 5th year, Severus faced one of the greatest challenges of his career as a double spy. Dumbledore asked him to teach Harry occlumency, the magical art that serves as a mental defense against legilimency, the ability to penetrate another person's mind to access their thoughts and memories, a task that required him to be close and trustworthy with James Potter's son. The lessons were an absolute disaster, marred by mutual hostility between teacher and student, and Severus's inability to separate his feelings for James from his responsibility to Harry. The situation became even more complicated when Harry accidentally saw Severus's memories during an occlumency lesson. Harry witnessed the humiliation Severus had suffered at James's hands, including the moment he had called Lily a mudblood. This invasion of privacy destroyed any possibility of a functional relationship between them, and Severus refused to continue the lessons. When Harry rushed to the Ministry to save Sirius, based on a false vision implanted by Voldemort, Severus found himself in an impossible position. He knew it was a trap, but he couldn't explain how he knew without revealing his position as a double spy. He did what he could, alerting the Order of the Phoenix and trying to protect Harry indirectly, but he couldn't prevent Sirius's death. Sirius's death was another traumatic moment in Severus's life. Although he despised Sirius, his death represented the loss of yet another connection to his youth and to Lily. More importantly, he knew that Harry would partly blame himself for Sirius's death, just as Severus blamed himself for Lily's. This shared understanding of guilt and loss created a subconscious connection between them, though neither could recognize it at the time. Harry's 6th year brought dramatic developments in the war against Voldemort. Dumbledore began tutoring Harry in Voldemort's history and psychology, preparing him for the final confrontation. At the same time, he asked Severus to swear an unbreakable oath with Narcissa Malfoy, promising to protect Draco during his impossible mission to kill Dumbledore. The unbreakable oath placed Severus in a desperate situation. He swore to protect Draco Malfoy, but he also knew that if Draco failed to kill Dumbledore, Voldemort would kill not only the boy, but his family as well. At the same time, he knew that allowing Draco to kill Dumbledore would be a disaster for the light side of the war. The solution Dumbledore and Severus came up with was horrifying in its simplicity. Severus would have to kill Dumbledore himself. The headmaster was slowly dying from a curse he had contracted when destroying Marvolo Gaunt's ring, one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. Dumbledore knew he had little time left to live and decided his death could serve multiple purposes. It would save Draco from becoming a murderer, preserve Severus's position as a double spy, and allow Severus to take control of Hogwarts to protect the students during the Death Eater occupation. The conversation between Dumbledore and Severus about this plan was one of the most painful of both their lives. Dumbledore was asking the man who had dedicated himself to protecting him to become his killer. Severus was being forced to kill the only person who truly understood his complex nature and who had offered him a chance at redemption. The emotional weight of this decision was almost unbearable for Severus. On the fateful night the plan unfolded, Severus faced the most terrifying moment of his life. When he reached the top of the astronomy tower and saw Dumbledore unarmed and surrounded by Death Eaters, with Draco trembling and unable to carry out his mission, Severus knew the moment had come. The look Dumbledore gave him was not one of fear or pleading, but of understanding and perhaps even gratitude. When Severus uttered the words Avada Kedavra and the green light struck Dumbledore, a part of his soul died along with the headmaster. He had become everything he had once despised, a murderer who killed someone who trusted him. The fact that it was Dumbledore's plan didn't lessen the agony of his actions. He had lost not only his mentor and protector, but also the only person who truly believed in his capacity for redemption. Harry's reaction to witnessing Dumbledore's death was devastating to Severus. Seeing the shock, pain and hatred in the green eyes that so reminded him of Lily was like being stabbed in the heart. Harry screamed coward at Severus as he fled with Draco, and those words would echo in Severus's mind for months to come. Ironically, committing the most courageous act of his life had made the very person he most needed to protect see him as a coward. After Dumbledore's death, Severus assumed the position of headmaster of Hogwarts, a position he had secretly desired for years, but which was now a source of constant torment. He was no longer just a stern teacher in the dungeons. He was the face of the Death Eater occupation of Hogwarts, forced to implement cruel policies and watch students being tortured by his allies. As headmaster during this dark period, Severus faced a constant dilemma between maintaining his cover as a loyal Death Eater and protecting the students under his care. He had to allow the Carrows to torture students, but work discreetly to minimize the damage. He sent troublesome students to detention in the Forbidden Forest with Hagrid, knowing they would be safe there. He deflected severe punishments whenever possible and ensured that important information reached the student resistance indirectly. The irony of his position was bitter. He had finally achieved the power and respect he had always craved, but at a cost that rendered those achievements meaningless. He was feared and respected, but for all the wrong reasons. He controlled Hogwarts, but only as a puppet of forces he despised. And he was more alone than ever, without allies or confidants, carrying secrets he could share with no one. During this period, Severus also had to deal with Voldemort's growing paranoia. The Dark Lord had become increasingly suspicious of his followers, especially after Harry continued to escape his traps and destroy his Horcruxes. Severus knew he was walking an increasingly thin tightrope, where one false move would mean torture and death. Voldemort's search for the Elder Wand also placed Severus in increasing danger. Voldemort believed that to defeat Harry Potter definitively, he needed the most powerful wand in the world. His investigations into the wand's history led him to conclude that Severus was its true master, having killed Dumbledore, its supposed previous owner. In fact, the one who disarmed Dumbledore before his death was Draco Malfoy in the Astronomy Tower. This made the Elder Wand's loyalty pass to Draco, even though he had never touched it. Later, at Malfoy Manor, Harry disarmed Draco, and it was at that moment that the wand recognized Harry as its true master. Voldemort, unaware of these details, believed Snape to be the wand's rightful owner, because he had been the one who cast the spell that killed Dumbledore. This ignorance sealed Severus's fate, leading Voldemort to decide to kill him in an attempt to reclaim the wand's power. When the Battle of Hogwarts finally began, Severus knew his days were numbered. He had fulfilled nearly every aspect of his mission. He had protected Harry during his school years, provided crucial information for Voldemort's defeat, and minimized the damage during the Hogwarts occupation. But there was still one final piece that only he knew. Harry himself was a Horcrux and would have to die for Voldemort to be defeated. This was perhaps the cruelest truth Severus bore. During all those years of protecting Harry, he knew he was essentially raising a lamb to the slaughter. Harry would have to sacrifice his life to save the wizarding world, just as his mother had done to save him as a baby. The irony of this situation was not lost on Severus. He was protecting Harry only so the boy could die at the right time. Severus's final confrontation with Voldemort took place in the Shrieking Shack, the same place where years earlier he had confronted Sirius Black and Remus Lupin. Voldemort summoned Severus, claiming he needed his skills for the final battle, but Severus knew it was a trap. He went anyway, perhaps seeking a form of death that would finally bring peace to his tormented soul. Voldemort wasted no time with explanations or accusations. He simply declared that Severus had been a loyal servant, but that he needed to die so that the Elder Wand could truly serve its new master. Severus didn't try to flee or defend himself. He knew it would be futile, and part of him was tired of carrying the weight of all his secrets and guilt. Severus's death was brutal and appropriately symbolic. Voldemort used Nagini, his snake familiar, to kill him rather than using the killing curse. This meant Severus would die slowly, with just enough time to pass on his final memories to Harry. The snake's venom slowly eroded his life, giving him the precious minutes he needed to complete his final mission. When Harry arrived at the Shrieking Shack and found Severus dying, the moment was fraught with irony and tragedy. Severus had spent years despising Harry, seeing in him only James Potter's son. But now, in his final moments, he saw only Lily's eyes looking at him with compassion. Through those eyes, Severus found the strength to surrender his most precious and painful memories. The memories Severus gave Harry were his final confession and his testament. They revealed the full truth about his life, his love for Lily, his terrible choices as a young man, his redemption through service to Dumbledore, and most importantly, the fact that he had spent 17 years protecting Harry out of love for Lily's memory. These memories also revealed the hardest truth, that Harry would have to die. Severus's last words were, "Look at me," spoken to Harry. In that final moment, Severus didn't want to die looking at James Potter's son. He wanted to die looking into the eyes of Lily Evans, the only person he had ever truly loved. Through Harry's eyes, he could see Lily one last time, and perhaps find some peace in his final moments. Severus's death marked the end of one of the most complex and tragic stories in the entire Harry Potter saga. He died as he had lived during his final years, alone, misunderstood, and carrying secrets few could understand. But his final actions ensured that Harry had the information he needed to defeat Voldemort and save the wizarding world. After the battle, when Harry used the pensieve to view Severus's memories, he finally understood the true nature of the man he had spent years hating. Harry saw the lonely boy from Spinner's End, the passionate young man who had lost his first and only friend in a moment of anger, the remorseful Death Eater who had dedicated his life to redemption, and the reluctant hero who had sacrificed everything to protect the son of the woman he loved. This revelation completely transformed Harry's perception of Severus Snape. He realized that Severus had been one of the bravest people he had ever known, though that courage manifested itself in ways that were difficult to recognize. Severus had faced constant danger as a double spy, had carried crushing guilt and regret for years, and had made impossible choices in the name of the greater good. Severus Snape's legacy is complex and contradictory, much like the man himself. He was simultaneously hero and villain, protector and tormentor, lover and murderer. His actions saved countless lives, including that of Harry Potter, but his methods were often cruel and his motives not always pure. He fought the dark side of his nature throughout his adult life, not always successfully, but always with determination. For Harry, discovering the truth about Severus was a profound lesson in the complexity of human nature. He learned that people can carry both good and evil within them, that the choices we make define who we are more than our natural inclinations, and that love, even obsessive, unrequited love, can be a transformative and redemptive force. Severus's story also serves as a reminder that our actions have lasting consequences and that moments of anger or poor choices can haunt us for a lifetime. But it also shows that it's never too late to choose the path of redemption, even if that path is lonely and painful. Years after the war, Harry named one of his sons Albus Severus Potter, in honor of both Dumbledore and Snape. When explaining this choice to his son, Harry said that Severus Snape had been probably the bravest man I ever knew. These words represent the complete evolution of Harry's understanding of Severus, from hatred to understanding, from condemnation to admiration. The story of Severus Snape is ultimately a story about the transformative power of love and regret. It's about how our worst choices can define us, but how our best choices can redeem us. It's about the complexity of human nature and how even the most difficult and troubled people can carry within them seeds of greatness. Severus Snape lived a life marked by pain, loss, and regret. But he also lived a life of extraordinary courage, unwavering dedication, and profound love, even if that love was complicated and sometimes destructive. His story reminds us that we are all capable of both great evil and great good, and that the choices we make, especially in the most difficult moments, truly define who we are. In the end, Severus Snape found the redemption he had sought throughout his adult life. Not through Lily's forgiveness, which would never come, nor through public acknowledgement of his sacrifices, which he never sought, but through the certainty that his actions had protected the son of the woman he loved and helped defeat the evil he had helped create. This redemption may have come at the cost of his life, but for Severus, who had lived so many years carrying the weight of guilt and regret, finally finding peace through the ultimate sacrifice was perhaps the only fitting way to end his story. And so we come to the end of this journey through the complex and fascinating life of Severus Snape, the man who taught us that true love can redeem even the most lost souls. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching this entire video. I know it was a long story, but I hope it was worth every minute of your time. Your presence here is essential for us to continue bringing you quality content about the Harry Potter universe. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life of the Half-Blood Prince, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Also, leave a comment with which character you'd like us to explore next. We have many more incredible stories to tell together. Until next time.